Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have ENTJ versus ESTP. These types sometimes get mixed up for each other. A lot of ESTPs sometimes get mistyped as ENTJ. SE for some people can seem a little bit TE-like. And so today we are here to differentiate these two types more clearly. So if you have someone in your life, or if you're someone going between these two types, this might serve as some possible ways to tell apart these two types. And so, Kat, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Hi, I'm Kat. I live in Philadelphia. I am a certified profiler and an ENTJ.
Heck yes. And Nee?
Hi, my name is Nee. I live in Denver, Colorado. I used to work with Personality Hacker, and now I'm a researcher in R&D.
Excellent. And Kate?
I'm Kate with TypeMatch, the MBTI-based dating app, and I'm an ESTP. I also have a YouTube channel.
Cool beans. And supreme leader of the ESTPs, Flow State, Taylor?
I forgot that was still my name. My name's Taylor. I run a YouTube channel, Flow State, and I work in construction, live in Kansas City.
Sick. And Daniel?
Hi, yeah, Daniel Storm, also an ESTP, and I don't really do much with typology except show up when Joyce asks for an ESTP, or if my wife, Susan Storm, who runs Psychology Junkie, needs an ESTP opinion. So that's my little plug right there.
Yeah, so feel free to check out both the YouTube channels and the websites in the descriptions below. Kate has a great channel called TypeMatch. Taylor has a great channel called Flow State, and Daniel's wife owns a website called Psychology Junkie. So if you'd like to see their supreme awesomeness, as Taylor puts it, then go look in the links below. And my name is Joyce. I'm a certified MBTI practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. So my first question to all of you is, why do you believe these types tend to get confused for each other sometimes? I think ESTPs experience this the most. So I'm wondering, why do you believe that sometimes people mistaken ESTPs to be ENTJs?
I have an ENTJ father-in-law, and so I've actually gotten to observe this up close and personal plenty of times. He tends to be fairly high energy. TE wants to get things done and move forward on what their organization is for the outer world. And I think SE being very action-oriented as well, sometimes those two things can get mistaken for each other. So while the TE is outwardly being active to accomplish their goals, very goal-oriented, SE is more just interacting with the world regardless of the goals.
The motto for SE is kind of like, let's do this. And that can look a lot like TE's kind of way of getting shit done, if that makes sense. So I definitely agree with that, Daniel.
Yeah, and my dad is an ENTJ too. So both types, it's an easy mistake, I think, to make, because both types are sort of controlling the environment. ENTJs have more of a reason for their madness, I think, than ESTPs do a lot of the times, but it's very easy to see how, if you're on the receiving end of that behavior, the types can feel exactly the same.
I think also the way we speak is very similar. It's very direct communication and to the point, and just, going right at it and talking to people only really if you have a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of assertive.
I'd echo all of that, because it seems like both types are energetic, action-oriented, confident, and so it can be easy for people to assume, okay, they must be an ESTP, might be an ENTJ, or vice versa. So it seems like from the outside world, the behaviors may look similar, and people might draw conclusions for that reason.
Really well put, everyone. The communication style of people who use both SE and NI, so the polarity SE and NI, they tend to be more purposeful with the points that they'll get across to people. And so you'll see with ESTPs and ENTJs that when they'll talk, it's very succinct and to the point. And also to the point that Flow State mentioned before as well. It seems like the behavior on the surface might look a little similar, but the cognition behind it is very different. Taylor has mentioned before how one of the ways you can differentiate an ENTJ and an ESTP is the ENTJ will go in with a plan, and the ESTP has a more adapting approach because it's almost limiting or restrictive if you plan too much. And so they'll want to keep it more open-ended. Perceivers in general, people who lean more on SE or NE, will like to keep an open-ended approach with things. Whereas like if you have more of NI or SI, sometimes you'll want closure or close-endedness to things. And that's one of the ways you could potentially differentiate the types. Their relationship with scheduling. I know some ENTJs who will schedule time for things, like me with his chess lessons. Maybe he'll have a certain time he'll put in the chess lesson. And so maybe with Kat, with the multiple priorities that she has, maybe to make the most, to maximize, to TE, be efficient with her time, she might use like a intense scheduling method. Whereas maybe with Flow State Taylor, you'll have more of a free form type of scheduling and go like, screw schedules.
No type of scheduling. I outsource that.
Yeah, so Taylor hates schedules. I always have to ask him a few minutes before panels if he wants to join the panel. But that's only on the extreme end. So some people are like this, and you can tell right away that they're JRP. But some people are on the edge. Like I know some ESTPs who are very planned. So that might not be a good differentiator, but it's good for some of them. If they're like Flow State, it would be an easy differentiator.
No, I think a lot of that is lifestyle. My lifestyle right now is very conducive to me not scheduling anything at all. And most of the things in my life that do need a schedule around them, my girlfriend handles all that stuff. But there have been times in my life, especially when I was in banking and stuff, that I was scheduled, and I can do it. And I do value it, but if I don't have to, I'm not going to.
I feel like with SE, like my impression of SE DOMs is like they like having the freedom to be able to like react and adapt more to the situation at hand. And I actually was just thinking about this in terms of ENTJs because we sort of overvalue that part of us, that like little SE in our tertiary. And we think that we're pretty good at improvising. And we're like, yeah, we're going to do it off the cuff. And like, but I think that's worth noting, like just to go back to what Joyce was saying, and that, you know, we feel like we need to have a little bit more control over what's coming. Maybe Nee would agree with this, because part of the reason is like we realize that, like subconsciously we realize it's not actually our strength to be improvising. And so if we can kind of control the parameters of the situation, then we feel more free to be able to you know, wing it in the moment because we've got like the framework there. Do you agree, Nee?
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like if I don't have an outline or mental model for something, I'm just totally lost. And it takes a lot of energy to try to make sense of it. And I feel like the more models I have in my mind, and you can probably relate to this, Kat, the easier it is to relax and be a bit spontaneous, because at least there's a plan or initial direction. And then if we choose to veer off that, at least we know that there's a structure, a system, or model that we can fall back on if needed.
Yeah, exactly. But I love that about SE DOMs. You guys are just like so willing to just like take the risk or just go with the flow. And it's so refreshing at times to be around an SE DOM. It's just like, well, let's see how it goes. We can finesse it as we go, or we can fine tune it as we're moving, which it's cool to see.
I don't know that I see it as, or for myself, I don't feel like it's risk taking so much. I've learned over my life that I improvise. Things go better if I improvise than if I plan a lot of times, particularly like I learned that with giving speeches. I can give a speech from cold perfectly if I know the topic matter. But if I have to like write a speech and plan it, it gets all kind of stale. And I've learned that improvising in the moment is one of my biggest competitive advantages. And so to just trust that.
Yeah. A story that you'll hear from SE DOMs a lot is back in school, they were way better when they improvised the speeches or improvised the spoken parts of presentations rather than prepare intensely, because it would just end up turning out more stale if they did that.
Well, if it's all like memorized, then if you forget something, then you're lost. So yeah, I would just have like a rough outline of like the general topics I'm going to talk about. And that's how I do my videos that are planned. But most like my videos that are planned are like a very rough outline. But most of my videos are just like, I just thought about this and am speaking about it and thinking as I speak.
Same.
And it's kind of hard for me to keep a video schedule because it's like, well, when is the inspiration going to strike? I don't know.
It's hard for me to keep a consistent theme on my channel, so I just sort of abandoned attempting that altogether.
Yeah, that's hard too. It's like, oh, everybody's like, oh, you need to make a series. It's like, oh, you made it about these types. Now make that same video about these types. It's like, I can't.
Yeah, it's so hard.
I don't want to. So
I got the first 2 types done. Isn't that enough for you people?
yeah, and I'll talk about these types regarding something totally opposite. So.
Yeah, it seems like one of the ways you can tell apart these 2 types is their relationship with improvisation.
Yeah, but ENTJs aren't bad at improvising either, in my experience. Like they may not be as comfortable with it, but it's ENTJs can pull off some FE too in the moment when they need to. I'm sure it's exhausting, but they can wheel and deal and work a crowd.
I think it's that we plan to improvise.
Right.
Whereas they can do it, but it's not part of the like forethought of.
I view the two worldviews as tactics versus strategy.
Taylor, could you go into tactics versus strategy?
Sure. I mean, tactics is improvising the moment, all the things that we just kind of discussed. And if you have it in like a military sort of context, tactics is recognizing what opportunities open up and then how to exploit them at the moment. It's much more opportunistic, whereas strategy is a bigger picture on a time frame, and you plan out like chess. You teach or take chess lessons, but chess is a great strategy game, and but you have to think several moves ahead, and not just about what you're going to do, but what your opponent is going to do, and hope that they follow your plan. With tactics, you look at the now, and then you move, and then after they move, you see what opportunity they've opened or threat they've presented, I guess is how I'd think about that.
I think that ESTPs win the battle and ENTJs win the war, unfortunately.
But a war's just a series of battles, so we'll see.
That's where SE and NI, I think, combine in a really great way. Like my wife is a INFJ, and so she's NI dominant. I'm SE dominant, and so she's always got these big picture plans, and she's great at working those plans and working through them and shaping her reality to the plan. Whereas I'm more about just taking advantage of what is happening in my current reality. So I think that kind of echoes what Taylor was saying, and as far as tactics versus strategy is just. But when you marry the 2 of them and somebody has a strategy and they allow you to work the tactics of the moment towards their strategy, it can be really an impressive thing to see work together.
Appreciate Flow State bringing out chess as a metaphor, because not a lot of strong chess players are also excellent tacticians. Usually the chess players fall into 1 or 2 camps. Either they tend to be more strategic, which is called positional chess, and then there are those who are really strong at tactics. And one of the things that's been interesting to learn is like somebody might be good at strategy in a game of chess, but if they can't see the opportunities in front of them, or they miss one, or their opponent catches one, you can have all the best strategy in the world and lose the game every time because you're not able to adapt. Sometimes those who are more strategic are too married to their plan, and when the game doesn't go the way they expect, it's difficult to recalibrate. So I mean, I think Daniel just mentioned that the strongest chess players tend to be very good at positional chess and also at tactics, where if the game goes in a different direction, they're able to calibrate. So it's interesting to see that dichotomy play out.
Yeah, it's very true how, Taylor, you were mentioning how SE is comparable to looking at opportunities in your present moment and figuring out how to make the most out of those opportunities you see in the now and then. SE sees the low-hanging fruit in the moment. So it's like that is the best fruit to take in that moment right now. And so they're very good at leveraging the potential tactics you can take in a certain moment to make the most out of the situation. And with NI, there's a bit of a more long-term approach to it. Like I'm sure Nee, when he's learning to play chess, he probably has this grand strategy for why he wants to learn chess. And he came up with all of these strategic steps to reach that final end goal. I feel like there's definitely some sort of end goal you have for it. Or I don't know how to explain it. It could be like a spiritual end goal too, because I know that you're a very spiritual person. But I find that everything contributes to a purpose. Everything Nee does, it's like all of these action steps that lead to an ultimate purpose. Like it's very linear in how it's taking you towards something. It's flexible because you do have SE within your top 3 functions, but the overall direction is definitely there.
I think that I like that, what you said about that, Joyce. And I was just thinking about that NI for ESTPs down the stack and how in that position it can be a little aspirational. So I feel like sometimes ESTPs can be like quite optimistic about the future, and sort of when it's coupled with that SE Dom, it's like very excited about seizing opportunities, versus we're maybe not as comfortable seizing opportunities sometimes. Maybe the opportunity that popped up is like, oh, I don't know, that where does that fall into my master plan, or like where does that fit into the framework? It doesn't. Oh, I don't know. Should I grab it? And I think we miss a lot of things that way.
I don't think our NI is optimistic. I don't know. Maybe some of the other ESTPs can chime in, but I'm pretty sure that I've been ready for the world to end tomorrow for my whole life. And I have a lot more confidence in my ability to handle the apocalypse in the moment, though, than I do in my ability to plan for the apocalypse, because historically, I got a solid 34-year track record of being wrong every single day about the world ending tomorrow.
They call it NI paranoia. When you have it in your inferior slot, it causes a paranoia sometimes, like what Flow State was mentioning.
Yeah.
And
my entire TikTok is they figured me out, and it's all conspiracy theories. And I can't even get on there anymore because I can spend hours. Like they figured out like, oh, this is how we get her. And it just gets me going too hard. And I'm like, we need to stock up. We need a plan. Like,
that's how my Twitter and my Telegram are.
Yeah. I have major prepper tendencies that I do not have the budget for right now, but one day.
I just bought this generator. You gotta get if you need a generator, Sam's Club has a great price on it. I just got mine. It's under $500 shit. $5,300.
One of my life goals to own a generator. Like I have been saying this for years. I'm like, I do need a generator. I also hate when the power goes out. That's like my most hated thing in the world. So,
well, Kate, a question for you, and I guess the rest of the ESTPs. Do you guys feel like there are common conspiracies that you cling on to, or fears that you guys find to be a common thread?
I've never talked to another ESTP about it, really. I watched Taylor's channel though, and it's about the same stuff. So.
Sometimes it can be about the government. I've heard that those rants. Yeah.
I don't think ESTPs are really fond of people in positions of authority over them, and so anybody who that's widely accepted as presents some sense of dubiousness as to their authenticity in that position. So it's very easy. The government's an easy target for that kind of paranoia and conspiracy theories. I think, especially for ESTPs, I always go off telling my wife about all the ways that all of the like medical community and the government and all this stuff is all linked and corrupt and just out there to really just get money, and they don't care about anybody else. And so that's like my thing. I'll probably once a month I go off on it, just because, I mean, especially recently with COVID and all the vaccination and mask and all this stuff that's been going on
Don't do it.
back and forth. It's like, so it's just so inane and stupid to me that I just can't help myself but to just go off on it.
I think the reason that we could get obsessed with it is like SE is looking at like what's happening in the world, and we're like, how do you not see this is happening? And then we're looking at what's happening. We're thinking, this doesn't make logical sense. These things don't line up. And then we're afraid of what it means. So it's like the perfect storm to be.
I mean, I think that there's also like some, I don't know if it's SE and TI combining to recognize some core realities and not lose track of them. But power is an incredibly sought after competitive. I mean, you don't fall your way up into these positions of power. You work your ass off constantly to get into these political offices, or to get to be Dr. Fauci, who's a national disgrace, or whoever it is. These people didn't get there because they're the nicest and they're the brightest. They got it there because they're the most competitive and they want it the most. So why? Now you have to ask, what is in it for them? Why do these people in positions of power want the power? And it's probably not because they really care the most about your kid getting a nutritious school lunch.
So it seems like you guys have, and correct me if I'm totally off, but it seems like if there's any kind of top-down power structure, whether it's government or large corporations, and there's like a hierarchy, then there's a sense of suspicion and mistrust. And you guys, it's more of like a top-down. You guys, it seems like you guys are more comfortable with top-down structures than, or bottom-up, structures rather than top-down structures. Is that?
Authority is unsettling. Yeah, I think you're right. Authority is very unsettling because implied in every authority structure is force and the devaluing of the subjected person's autonomy. So just necessarily power structures, laws, regulations, every one of these things necessarily and implicitly devalues you in the relationship.
Yeah. A narrative you'll hear a lot with people who value SC or NE is appreciating people's autonomy or appreciating their own autonomy. I think there's a type of ideally like hands-off approach. Just from interviewing people, I noticed that people who value SC higher up or NE higher up, they tend to value each individual's right to autonomy. And when that's threatened, there can be this huge pushback against that. But especially with what Flow State, Kate, and Daniel are mentioning about the government and suspicion about that, and preparing for an eventual doomsday, those are also what objective personality would call observer freakouts. So the type of freakout they're having is someone who is an EP. This is like an EP type of freakout, particularly. What is your relationship with everything that was said just now, me and Kat? How would you contrast that to your own experience?
I don't really know how to answer that. I love a good conspiracy theory just because I think it's really interesting to like hear all the perspectives, and to see kind of what other people are thinking about it and just be like, oh, there's another way to look at this thing. Maybe there's something I don't know about it. Maybe there's another angle. And I do believe in some conspiracy theories. I've got a few things that I'm holding very open. And, but yeah, versus maybe like the NI Dom that I live with, he'll get really sucked down into some conspiracy theory holes. That's not really my tendency. But I do find it pretty fascinating. What about you, Nee? You got anything you follow?
Not really. Yeah, I wouldn't say there are any like strong conspiracy theories that I'm plugged into, but it's fascinating to hear other people's perspectives of what they think a conspiracy is. And I'd love to go down the rabbit hole with them and understand what are the reasons why you believe this is a conspiracy. Help me understand this. So I find that very interesting. Like, what is the mental model or the conclusions or the beliefs that allowed somebody to arrive at the conclusion that this is a conspiracy. So I feel like that's very interesting.
Yeah, your NI likes to parse out their mindset and how they're arriving at their certain beliefs. That's cool. So my question for all of you is, what is the difference between SE and TE in the dominant slot? So what are some ways you can kind of parse that apart specifically?
I think in the short term, quick and easy, TE is very structured externally, as far as like their focus on the world around them. At least that's been my observation, right? I don't have TE, so this is all just kind of secondhand observation. Like I said, my father-in-law, he's owned his own business for probably, I don't know, 50 years. He's run his own businesses and stuff and been an incredible entrepreneur and been very, very successful at it. And a large part of that is because he understands the external structure that he needed to create to make this happen. And he was very good at that. For me, my SE is reactive. It's not really structured. It's not focused on a specific structure. It's just, like we talked before, taking advantage of what's right in front of me to the best of my ability. And sometimes, that takes me in this wide arcing curve around my goal as opposed to straight towards it. But I would feel like I let myself down if I didn't take advantage of the opportunity that was in front of me, that I was missing out on something.
That's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about the sustainability piece and how important that is to ENTJs. And I think that's an area where we differ, where we both maybe need to be seen. We both maybe want to be seen as competent, and but it's the competence, I feel like, for ESTPs is a little bit more about, hey, I want to be seen as competent so that I can have the freedom to do what I want to do in the moment or in the situation. Where for an ENTJ, it's a little bit more about wanting to develop a system or have like the competency to, so that when folks are looking at us, they have confidence in what we're doing. It's like maybe a different angle.
Yeah, the sustainability piece resonates a lot. And it feels like a distinction between the two, kind of touching on what you shared, Daniel, is it seems like TE is more proactive while SE is more reactive. It's adjusting or calibrating to what's in front, whereas TE can, whether it's tied to SI or NI, it seems like it's more proactive. Like, this is my intention and I'm going to try to make that intention happen in the outside world, rather than let's see what the outside world presents or provides and then calibrate accordingly.
I want you to know I wasn't laughing at you when you were speaking. I was laughing at how Taylor was lighting his cigarette. A torch. And I couldn't help but notice. But also tying that.
It's the only type of lighter I don't lose. Sorry.
I liked it. It was very intense.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I lost my point now.
Sorry.
It was tied to that. No, it was that with ESTPs, or SE DOMs, you'll notice that they are, like I just did, commenting on the external environment, like things that they can't help but notice, and they'll notice like trends in the environment, like, oh, stroopwafels are everywhere now, and little things like that. And I don't hear TE DOMs doing that, even though they have SE in the third position. It's not so a social commenter as SE Hero is.
An underplayed component of SE that's not mentioned enough is how it's related to seeing trends around you. So SE DOMs are the quickest to pick up on what's happening around them. So they're like, like what Kate was saying. They'll notice if everyone's wearing a certain hat now, and they're like, that's a weird trend. Why is that happening? And then the NI will try to figure out, like, why?
Yes, yeah. That's my whole day, basically. This a lot. I wonder what's beneath that.
I was just thinking about your ESTP's wonderful way of reading people's tells. Like that's one of your superpowers, right? Do you feel like you do? Because we think like with my SE in the backseat, I'm like, oh, I'm really good at reading people, you know. But ESTPs, I feel like you guys are pros. How does that feel for you? What's that like?
Do you mean body language?
That's part of it for sure, yeah.
It's frustrating because it feels like everybody's lying to themselves, not just to me, but to themselves.
I think it's also frustrating in the way that it seems obvious to me, and I don't understand why nobody else sees these things.
Yes.
And so that frustrates me because I'm like, isn't this obvious? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, this happened and this happened and then they did that. So this means this. Like it has to, and it does. And they're like, wow, I never even noticed that. I'm like, how could you not notice it? It was literally right in front of you. So that to me, that's something that's frustrating about it. It's helpful because yes, I can predict what someone is actually wanting without them saying it based on their body language or little tics or whatever, because, you know, if you're paying attention, you'll see it, but not 100% of the time, right? I'm going to throw that disclaimer out there. It's not like a perfect science or anything, but it does get frustrating when I feel like I'm the only one who's noticing certain things.
I get in arguments with people about it pretty regularly, about like what's really going on.
It feels like willful ignorance to me.
So the phrase "it's obvious" is such a SE Dom phrase. It kind of like SE is like, sounds like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck. It is a duck. Why is everyone else not arriving at this conclusion right now? It's actually, everyone else seems slow. And there's this impatience sometimes that comes with seeing others as slow. But I guess maybe ENTJ, it's possible that they might see other people as slow too, because the SE is still in their third slot. So that's possible. But ESTPs and ESFPs, man, do they think people are slow.
That's more interesting. Like, I feel like having SE in the tertiary seat, I'm not able to pick up body language as quickly or as subtly as I'd like, as I sense with ESTPs or other types. Like, Kat, I don't know about you. Sometimes I feel like I can also pick up on when somebody's lying to themselves, or like, this is how, and of course, I can't say that definitively because there's no way to actually know what somebody's thinking, but it can be like, okay, based on how somebody's seeing the world, this is probably what they're thinking or feeling, or probably what's going through their mind, but it's not something where I'm observing these details in their body language and I'm arriving at that conclusion. It's more like, based on, you know, how they seem to interact with the world, this is probably the script or the software script that's running in their mind, and this is probably how they react in these situations. But it's interesting to see how well you guys are able to be in the moment and observe those small details in body language, and it's just like right in front of you. Like, it's so obvious. It's right there. This makes you guys good poker players.
I was thinking that too, Nee.
The attention span is too short and poker games go on too long.
No, I
for
think
me,
you just I was going to say, I think you just have ADD. I love playing poker.
Well, fine, that is also true.
I think, like, I don't know if you feel this way, Nee, but I think ENTJs, we get told a lot that we have like a little bit of an antsy quality to us. Do you feel like that, ESTPs? Do you get that feedback? Is that like more of a TE thing, or just like, we gotta go do stuff? Or is that, do you get that too with SE?
I've never been told I'm antsy. I've been told I'm high energy, or distractible, but never antsy, I don't think.
Usually the language I hear is focused or intense, which I think is probably in the same family, or them essentially speaking to the same thing but using different language.
I'm very much like a right now person. If I get an idea to do something, it has to be like, we gotta go do it right now. But I think aggressive, even though I don't love that word to describe me. I do everything very aggressively. And like the way I move is very aggressive. And when I approach people, sometimes I can be aggressive. And I really try to control it. But if I get up during the middle of the night, I'll close the door loudly. And like everything I do is just kind of loud, so aggressive.
I think that's a good word. My wife has laughed at me many times because anytime one of our kids comes and knocks on our door in the middle of the night, she says it's like I have a springboard under me. I just like jump out of bed and she's still like trying to wake up. It's like instantaneous action.
I can get up
in
so
reaction.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, I like Soldier Boy, like hop up off the bed and get my tag on. That is how I am in the morning. Like there's no like multiple alarms. It's like let's go. Like, and I'm awake.
If I have to be up, I'm going to get started and just do this.
Yeah, we could have made great Minutemen.
Oh, for sure.
There definitely is a right nowness to SE, especially in the first slot. SE users, they kind of don't like to have things stack up. So they're like, if I'm thinking about it right now, I really need to do it right now. And so with my ESFP mom, it's the same way. Like when she has a thought, there's immediate action. Because there's this like, if I don't do it now, then I'm going to either be putting it off more than necessary or forget about it. Because I don't know, SE just doesn't like it when things stack. So there's this immediate need when you think about it to clean it off the board, clean it off. That was a really great word, Kate. And Daniel mentioned the word distractible.
Yeah.
And so that's
we have a phrase in my house for my type of distractibility. We call it laundry in the hallway energy. And it's when like I'm in the middle of doing something, like taking the laundry to wash it, and in the middle of that I'm like, oh, I need to do this other thing, so I set it down and I go do something else, and then from there I go do something else, and it's a few hours later and the laundry is still in the hallway.
That is an SE-DOM thing, because there's a quality of right nowness to SE-DOMness, like a present moment type ofness. So you have a thought, oh, I could act this way, and then you're doing that thing. So it can cause, if SE is in the first slot, it can sometimes cause a scatteredness, like just general extroverted perceiving higher up. The more higher up it is, sometimes there can be sometimes a lack of focus when completing tasks. There's like this task you're supposed to be doing, and sometimes you do like multiple tasks together, and then you forget about the other task, and you're like, And so the word distractible that Daniel used, I thought that was a good way to tell apart ENTJ and ESTP too. Like, I don't think you'll have an ENTJ who says that people sometimes call me distractible. I think even if they do switch between tasks, there still is a level of focus or directionality or linearness to an ENTJ that I don't think they would typically be called words like distractible. That is more of a word I would see an EP being called. It's more like an EP word sometimes to be called distractible. Yeah. I was thinking about auxiliary NI versus 4-slot NI. What are the differences you see between NI being in different slots like this? How does it manifest in the second position? And how does it manifest in the inferior position?
I know for me, my NI being in my inferior slot usually shows up when I'm stressed. And so it's not usually coming from a healthy place. And that's when I see everything as being in the future as being bad and going wrong. And so it's on the other hand, when I do get to use it in a healthy way is often when I'm engaged in what I call autopilot SE tasks, like mowing the yard. I don't really have to think about what I'm doing when I'm mowing the yard. And so I'm sitting there, I'm engaged in a task. So my SE is satisfied. And then I can kind of let my mind wander on these different things. And I'll come up with these conclusions that I would have never thought of if I hadn't had that moment. But it's always, my NI in a healthy way always only shows up when my SE is satisfied.
That's so true. That's the best thinking time. That's why I like woodworking.
And car videos. Driving is the same thing. Car videos are the best to make.
Yeah, because you can think in the car.
It's funny, my wife being an NI dom loves when we go on road trips because that's when she gets to engage with my NI. because I'm sitting there engaged driving. And so that's our conversation then can go all over the place and really deep, which is not something that ESTPs normally would do. But I mean, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Yeah, that's my wife loves that.
That's really, really interesting for me to hear you guys say that, because I always tell people that I have like my best aha moments when my SE is like doing some kind, like if I'm on a treadmill or just, on an elliptical machine or just like moving my body in some really predictable way. That's often when I'll have like my biggest ideas.
And that resonates as well. If SE, for me, it's like doing the dishes is one of them. Like if I'm doing the dishes and I'm just kind of on autopilot, it helps to have a little notepad nearby. And so I'll stop doing the dishes, dry off my hands, take some notes, get water on the notes, get annoyed, go back to the dishes. But that definitely resonates. If as a response to your question, Joyce, when I think about NI in the auxiliary seat, for me, like, well, one point I hold on is, for me, one of the things that's incredibly helpful is grabbing new mental models. That's like, so for example, would be the 80-20 principle, right? Which is one we probably heard a lot of times. I feel like any new mental model I collect that's valuable is like, I used to play those like Age of Empires and those like civilization games when I was a kid. And, it's like moving from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age. I feel like each new mental model that's really valuable is like a huge step up in the civilization. Or it's like getting a wheel, discovering the wheel for the first time, or the printing press. And it feels like it allows me to do so much more with a lot less energy and effort. So I'd say like my NI is always looking for mental models, and then seeing, okay, if this mental model works in this particular domain or industry, how does that apply over here, over here, over here? So that ideally can get to cleaner results and conclusions with less thinking and effort. Kat, does that resonate with you, or do you see it a little differently?
Yes, that was very well articulated. Loved it.
I'm sorry, Annie, I couldn't help but notice when you're talking about like having your notepad by you when you're doing dishes and stuff, I couldn't help but think that is like such a TE way to enjoy your NI. Having this like form and functionality and this organized outward model to use it on. It was just kind of funny to me, but it makes sense.
It helps. Without it, I feel like when you guys mentioned earlier that as ESTPs, if you have an idea, you want to act on it. For me, if I get an idea, I've got to write it down. That might not be the time to work on it, but if I don't write it down, I can be fearful that I'll lose it, and oftentimes I will lose it. So there is an instinct to, or an impulse to want to capture it, but not necessarily do it in the moment.
Yeah, to build off of what Nee's saying, SE DOMs, when they have an idea, they want to act. And when TE DOMs have an idea, they want to structure it. And the way that Nee structures it is by writing it down. Really cool.
I think low functioning NI. I mean, I think that we understand the structure through doing, and that without actually engaging with it, we have trouble building a good structure.
Yeah. More of a hands-on learner, get your hands dirty, or try to understand it by immersing yourself in it. They said that SE is kind of like your body is an instrument, and so you kind of have to experience it for yourself, or see it for yourself, or do it for yourself, or act on it yourself to truly, truly understand it. Like, people can talk theory all they want, but until you really put yourself in it, it's all just theory until you find a way to make it tangible by putting yourself in a situation where you can like fully grasp it by immersing yourself and experiencing. A good word to describe SE is the word experiencing.
Taking action as a way to gain a skill. Like, does that resonate for ESTPs?
Yes. I mean, I think that in order to know how to do something or have a skill in it, the fastest way to gain a skill is to do something. You have to practice. And also, the only way to understand something is to do something. We've all been to school enough to know that what you learn and then how you implement it can be it's more common that they're different than that they're the same. So I guess there's no substitute for doing the thing ever in life. You just have to do the damn thing.
I used to always complain that college was pointless because anything that I could gain a job in by having a bachelor's degree, I could probably learn within 6 months or less on the job just doing it.
Absolutely. College was fun, but it's such a racket. It's absolutely a racket. It's like how the Catholic Church used to sell people indulgences so you could go to heaven. It's the same way. Colleges are selling people diplomas so you can, get the job that you want.
Fascinating. And so I'm wondering about third slot SE contrasted with first slot SE. I know we've already gone through examples, but did anyone else have anything to add on to that, chat?
I was thinking earlier today about when SE's in the tertiary, it can manifest itself in kind of like an image management type of way that I don't know ESTPs have the same experience. But I was actually wondering about how like the FE ties in with the SE, and if that's ever like a because I don't know, we were talking about once about SE DOMs having, maybe it was just ESTPs in particular, having some interest at times in like, wearing the right brand or like having the right car or whatever the thing is. And so I'm interested in kind of that idea, like how image management plays out when SE's in a different slot and how FE plays into it, if it does.
I think that for me, image management has always been directly tied to the utility of that I can get out of it. I hate image management. When I worked in banking, there was a lot of it because obviously I'm not the typical banker personality. So there's a lot of time and attention spent to like, acting in line and I don't miss that shit at all. I hate it. But we do respect that people make judgments based off quick, readily available information, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's how it is. And so a lot of times, you just can't get around image management. I don't enjoy doing it. We don't enjoy doing it, but at the end of the day, you have to attend to it some, or else you're going to have a lot more problems than if you just ignore it.
I like what Taylor said about it being more about utility and functionality. Like that's huge for me. I don't particularly care what brand or model or make or anything is that I use, and I don't care what anybody else thinks about the brand, make, or model of whatever it is I use. If it does the job I need it to do, and it's going to be able to do it, so I don't have to worry about it breaking or failing on me, it's predictable, and I can use that as a tool that I know is not going to fail me, then that's what I care about. But I think that for me anyway, the tendency to not care about image management has led to me being probably, I don't know, people misconstruing what I'm actually capable of, and not realizing what I do know and what I can bring to the table, and the competence that I do have in those areas.
I think in trying to manage my image now, I just kind of hide a lot of things about myself.
Like what?
For example, my political views, or where I live, or what kind of car I drive. Like basically almost everything I just try to hide from the public. And I'll be extremely open about certain things like my ideas, and then that gives people a false sense of me being open with them. It's like I'm only telling you the things that I don't actually care if you know. But things that are like intimate to me or make me vulnerable in some way, I hide. And it's just perceived vulnerability.
I do the same thing. I think that we probably all of us use selective disclosure.
Yeah.
Actively.
Yeah. And I often give people a false sense of like how close we are to each other. Like they'll feel very, very close to me and they feel like I'm really opening up to them. But it's just about things that like, I don't know. It's like I've processed that so long ago, it doesn't even register with me as a feeling anymore. So I don't actually feel close to them.
Yeah, that's the extrovert skill. Like extroverts are very good at making people feel closer to them than they actually feel to the other person. So sometimes you'll hear a story that extroverts say is, I'm really great at making other people feel like my best friend, or that like there's some sort of closeness there, when I really don't feel the same way back, unfortunately.
And I think that's Effie Child too. I love making people feel good. I love giving somebody like a really good compliment, like something that I noticed about them that I bet other people don't notice, and like calling it out to them. But it's like I'm more focused on giving them a good experience through that than actually connecting. But I don't know if that fell in line with image management. I will say when I was a teenager, I was very worried about like what brand of clothes I was wearing and everything, but I was just going through a very insecure stage and I had no idea who I was. So.
Image management is a great way to figure out someone's Enneagram type too. So you can figure out if someone might be an Enneagram type 3 if you ask them about their relationship with image management, because type 3s really care about maintaining a good public persona or looking good.
Aren't a lot of ENTJs type 3s? Yeah?
Yeah, they're both type 3s.
Are you? Okay. I just found out my Enneagram. I wasn't into it before. I thought I might be a 3, but no. I think I'm an 8.
Yeah, when you described yourself as assertive and sometimes possibly aggressive, that was like kind of And Taylor's also an 8.
Yeah, I'm an 8, 3, 6 in my tri-type. So I got the 3 right next, but definitely 8.
Yeah, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think Daniel is a 7.
Yeah, I'm definitely a 7. I thought I was an 8 for a while, but then after talking to Taylor and John, some other actual 8s, I was like, yeah, it's definitely there. It's in my wing. I'm a 7 wing 8, but not in my first primary position. But yeah, no, I'm a 7. I'm very much about, well, let's just this is terrible. Let's just move past it and keep going. And we'll be fine. I thought I was a 9 for a while because of that, but I'm not avoidant enough to be a 9. I don't mind being confrontational, unless it's something that's particular, vulnerability to me. And then I'm like, oh, we're just going to skip over that. So.
I'm thinking about possible Enneagram type 9 ESTPs. The vice of the type 9 Enneagram type is sloth. So it's actually laziness. So I think, we always talk about SE-DOMs as being extremely action-oriented, but I'm sure there are some who exist out there who would consider themselves lazy or just like to do things slowly, be chill. And they're probably still SE-DOMs. But yeah, I just wanted to shine a light to them.
I can be lazy as fuck. When I have spurts of laziness, it's intensely lazy.
I think for me, like, and this is part of the reason I thought I might be a 9 is being an SE, I love physical activity. I love playing sports and any kind of physical engagement I can get. However, I also will put off any actual responsibilities until I absolutely have to do them usually. Right? Like if I have a 12-hour day to get stuff done and like usually a J type would be like, oh, I need 8 hours to do my work in. I'd be like, no, I'm going to probably do whatever I want to do for 10 hours and cram 8 hours worth of work into the last 2. And some people see that as lazy. And I don't know. I think that's just for me, how I've always been as an ESTP. Like I'll just put it off. I like to play first.
But it works though. I mean, that's the thing about that lifestyle is that it works. I do the same thing and it works just fine. The last 2 hours of the day are always shitty, but it's not like things don't get done.
Yeah, and that's when my wife is normally asking me if I'm angry, but it's just because I'm like putting all my energy into accomplishing things as fast and efficiently as possible.
She's asking you these questions, like, get out of here.
Just let me finish my tasks and I'll be good.
That's fabulous. And so ENTJs, what is your relationship with, like, you have 8 hours to do a task. How would you go about accomplishing that?
I'd plan how I allocate those 8 hours first. If I don't and I jump into it, I'm not going to be as effective. So creating an outline, almost think of it as like, what's the vision? At the end of the 8 hours, what do I want the result to look like? So having the vision and then creating the outline and then jumping into the task. And then at the end, kind of cleaning it up and making sure it's where it needs to be. But if I don't outline and I just jump in, I end up expending a lot of energy and not getting high quality results as if I planned before.
I find that when I try to plan my time, I'm a very bad judge of what's going to take how much time. Do you guys find that you're pretty good at assessing how much time something will take you?
I was just going to say, like, part of the planning is leaving a piece at the end for, like, stuff that came up that was unexpected, right, Nee? Or, like, you know, having some flexibility at the end. That's really key. If I, like, don't know that there's going to be a little flex time at the end, I'm freaking out a little bit inside.
I never did that.
Yeah, I've got a little countdown clock for a project I'm working on, a personal project. And I time a lot of things. I've got little timers all over the house. And what I find is that if I set a timer and I set it away from my like direct vision, like I've been doing this for a while now, like where I'll finish right as the clock rings. So unconsciously, I feel like I'm orienting myself to that clock. Now with this project, I'm like way off. I'm like probably 3 or 4 months off the timeline. So I still struggle with accurately timing projects that take months. But if it's minutes or hours, somehow if I set a timer or a clock and I tell myself it's getting done by this time, somehow things happen in such a way where right around that time, the project is done.
A great way to kind of know if someone's a TJ, so any of the TJs, is how good they are at estimating how much time it takes to do certain tasks. It's like knowing this task will take X amount of time probably, and that task will take that amount of time probably, and here's the amount of variance time. And typically when the time estimations are wrong, it's because someone else threw them off of those time estimations. So someone else kind of went into the plan and then destroyed the plan in some way. And so the time estimations went hoo-ha. But generally TJs are pretty good at guessing how long it'll take to finish things. So it's interesting how Taylor mentioned that point about time estimations.
I used to get way too ambitious with my days because I couldn't estimate how long things would take. So I'd make a list of like 10 things, and then my boyfriend kept telling me, like, you're like, when he would see it, like, this is way too much. And I'm like, no, if we move quickly, we can do all this. It's like, you can really only do like 3 things in a day is what I've learned after 2 years. So now I make shorter lists.
I spend a lot of time with NFs currently, and they are so optimistic about what can happen in a day or in an hour, or they actually they're not even thinking about the clock. I find it so interesting. I'll be with like an NF and it's like, oh, let's do this thing. And it's like, well, wait, you have a 2 o'clock appointment. Like, that's in 40 minutes. Like, how will we ever? And they're like, oh yeah. Like, they just had no idea like what time it even was. I find it so fascinating. I don't know if you feel the same, Nee, but there is like a clock ticking in my mind at all times of the day, I think.
100%. If somebody says like, hey, let's do this, in my mind, I'm like, in saying yes to this, you're saying no to those 3 or 4 things. We might not realize it now, but in 3 or 4 hours, you'll realize that all those things can't be done because yes to this means no to those 3 things.
Yeah, I'm always poo-pooing every party. I'm always the person who's like, nope, we're never gonna get all that stuff done. This is crazy, guys. Like, sorry to be bad news here. I feel like such a jerk.
Yeah, the TE superpower of knowing how to use your time. And so I'm wondering, what is the difference between inferior FI in the ENTJs from tertiary FE and ESTPs? How does everyone experience their feelings here?
I think the hardest thing, I mean, this isn't exactly the question, but whatever, about the positioning of FI for ESTPs is I don't have a sense of the innate or like intrinsic value of anything. It's all what it can be used for. And that's difficult as a person because it's like, okay, well then by that logic, then people are only valuable for in what ways they can be useful to others. And I can't see people as valuable unless they're providing something, or myself, if anybody relates to that.
I do. And I think that probably all three of us have had the experience dating. Like dating, you got to go through a handful of, like, you're in a relationship and you don't think you care about the person, then you break up. And it's not until after you break up where you realize if you like that person or didn't like that person. But at that point, you kind of already made your bed. So I think as I've gotten older, like FI, and my girlfriend's an FI dom, but having kids was like a big FI awakening moment. And just getting older, I think that's definitely something that has gotten better.
I think I'm terrible at FI. The word that I find most often tied to it is authenticity. And for me, I can be whatever I need to be in the moment. And it feels authentic to me because it's fulfilling what needs to happen right then. But it isn't truly at my core who I am if I were to sit down and compare what I did versus who I actually think I am. And so that's something that I think people can often look at ESTPs and see them as being kind of wishy-washy about things. Because in one moment, it might require you to be one way, and in the next moment, you might need to be the opposite, and we'll do it. And it's not that we don't have our own sense of values, but it's just that to take advantage of the opportunities, it makes more sense to get the fullest out of it. I don't know. That's kind of my thought process in it anyway.
Yeah. To not want to close off all the SE opportunities in the moment, you might want to be slower with deciding how you feel with certain things.
Everything is subjective to that particular instance and moment.
The fact of the matter is that we value our utility or our ability to impact whatever we're trying to do. That is a higher value than, I guess, not everything, but a lot of things that people kind of carry around with them. A lot of, who knows, allegiance to a sports team or, whatever. People get these weird bonds, these weird mental and emotional bonds to things that just don't matter to us as much.
I think, okay, so ENTJs have FE inferior? No.
Eighth.
Yeah, the eighth one, whatever that's called. My brain is not working right now. Whereas we have it for child. And so ENTJs will kind of have a bit of a disregard for social norms, which they somehow get away with better than any other type I've seen. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll jump in. For me, I don't know if I would say I have a disregard for social norms, because I found that in the past, as a result of breaking social norms, it made it more difficult to accomplish things or to create alignment. So I'm more cued into social norms because I feel like it's important. Because if I'm breaking social norms, then for a number of people, depending on their type, that can be a blocker, and it can prevent them from it can prevent them from moving forward. So I feel like being sensitive to social norms has become more and more important because it's important to other people. And then also, I don't necessarily want to create unnecessary friction with people or whatnot. Doesn't mean that there isn't a season and time to break social norms, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's a card to hold on to, and I'll use it when I feel like it's a high leverage and it makes sense. But I prefer not to break social norms if I don't have to.
Or maybe we just do it in a less obvious way. We do it when people can't see it as much. I don't know. I think as TE DOMs, we've kind of learned just that there are certain skills that you have to, whether they're really FE or not, they can just look like FE because we're like, well, if I do this way, just like Nee said, it's, I don't have a better word, but it's almost a manipulation. Sometimes that's not the right word. That's got a really negative connotation, but we just sort of understand what we need to do to get the thing done. And kind of like Nee said, how to play our cards. But I think deep down, we really don't give a shit about social norm. At least I don't. So maybe that's what you're saying, Kate, is just like the disregard. I don't really care about them. It's not something I'm concerned with. It's just maybe something that we feel like as TE people, we have to work within that system. So we just find a way to make it work.
Just to add to what you shared, Kate, Kat, one area where I feel like one way that I might interpret social norms is also like a company or culture where they're like, we do it this way because we've always done it that way. So we're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to do it that way. And that's a situation where it can be really difficult and frustrating because I question but why are we doing it that way? The conditions that led us to do it that way, are those conditions still in play? And if not, why are we still doing it that way? Let's question fundamentally how we're doing things. So I feel like that's probably an area where it can be difficult to go with a social norm if people are just doing it just for the sake of doing it. That's difficult.
I love that. I love that about ENTJs, that y'all don't do things this way just because this is how we've always done it. That's fantastic.
I think ESTPs appreciate that. I think we like to try to do that, but I don't think we're as good at it as an ENTJ is, because I think you guys see the social norms and those social workings more as a tool to use to get the job done, as opposed to something that is important. Yes, it can be important if it's required to get the job done. Because what I've heard both of you guys saying is you're talking about how you can use it if it's required to get this thing done. So it's like your interpersonal interactions and niceties that most people might just consider normal is a tool for you to just get that accomplished. And that's what's more important. So if you can get by without doing it, you will. And I can appreciate that because I would prefer to be more that way myself. But with FE being tertiary, it's almost like baked into my personality to try to work within that structure, even if it doesn't always make the most sense, just because it'll ruffle fewer feathers that way.
This is fascinating. And so I'm wondering, my last question for everyone is, what are some really quick differentiators you would possibly have between these two types? Like if you were to put it into a summarized statement, how would you put it?
I would say strategy versus tactics is a great one. Long-term versus short-term orientation. It feels like SE is more oriented towards the present moment, here and now, whereas NI is more concerned about long-term. So I think that timeline horizon is another difference.
I think the focus of goals is another one. Like ENTJs, all the ones that I've known always have goals and things on the horizon in a more long-term vision, which again can be tied to strategy versus tactics, but it's specific to goals. My goals are constantly changing from day to day versus enduring over time to completion.
I think that for anyone who's trying to figure out how to quick tell if somebody's one or the other type, I think the fastest way would be to look for little FE things. Like if you meet an ESTP in the hallway and we engage with you, you don't have to know us to see if we're kind of attending to you on an FE level. When you meet an ESTP, we're going to kind of FE with you a little bit and play around that way. ENTJs aren't going to. There's going to be more formal, I'd say, and you can almost feel that little bit of impatience at the social interaction.
That is a really good point. There's this phrase called TE professionalism. You can definitely feel it off of TE users. Even when they're friendly, it feels like TE professionalism. It's like what Flow State mentioned. Sometimes when I will talk to ENTJs, I'll kind of feel like, it's not like they mean to, but I almost sometimes feel like rushed, or in some way I want to be able to convey a point to them in some amount of time. I can feel their urge to kind of move from goalpost to goalpost. And so it can feel like that thing that Flow State mentioned.
I've gotten that feedback a lot where it's like people are like, they feel like I'm waiting for them to like get to the point all the time. Get to the point. And I'm not always. I'm really not. I'm interested in what they have to say. But that's like the energy we often bring to a conversation, right, Joyce? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. That's 100%. Yeah, what I was saying. And it's quite funny because my ESFP mom just came in and she's like, Joyce, we have sushi. This is a very spontaneous thing she did in the moment. And so it was quite well timed because we were talking about how SE is very tactical, it's adaptable and flexible, and it's kind of like figuring things out as it goes. My mom just improvisationally bought sushi and she's like, hey, sushi for people. Yay. And I'm like, such an SE in the moment type of thing.
I would say another difference is that ESTPs give out a lot of specific examples of like, I've seen a lot of this, I've heard a lot about that lately, and they'll constantly be drawing on these experiences, whereas ENTJs, they may be talking around that topic, but they won't give the concrete examples to it. They'll be speaking about it in general in the abstract and where things are going.
That is a magnificent differentiation. I totally see that with Nee and Kat. When I talk to them, they'll give me a generalization. You know, Nee will give me the 80-20, which is he loves that, in the form of concepts. And Kat will talk about things rather generally too. Whereas when I talk to SE users, they'll be more specific with their language, give more specific what's happening around them type of answers. And so that was a good differentiator as well. Nice spotting that. And so thank you everyone for coming out and sharing your magnificent insights. It was fantastic to hear the differentiations among all of you. It's great to hear how the SE DOMs, they do better with speeches when they're kind of improvising on the spot rather than intensely preparing. That was just an interesting anecdote that Taylor provided that I've heard a lot, like I've heard that time and time again with SE DOMs. So that's got to be somewhat of a thing, like somewhat of a trend. And remember, these are patterns, not rules. So although they do apply for the majority, we're not saying this applies all of the time. So don't fire hate in the comments. All things are patterns, not rules. And it's nice to hear about how ESTPs can kind of see the tells that other people are giving, can kind of read the body language or read the trends going on immediately around them or see what's happening immediately around them. It's like these eagle perceptions. It's superb. It's a superpower in itself. The adaptability, the flexibility, the ability to make the most out of the present moment, to really juice the lemon for all it's worth in the moment. So to really get out all the lemon juice. A lot of people, they often go through life missing some of the lemon juice from the lemon, but the SE DOMs always make sure to squeeze all that lemon juice. So that was wonderful. It explains to other people, hey, you know, if you just spend more time exploring what the now has to offer, then it provides a fresher look on life, or it's just great. And the talk about the hands-on type of learning, about how you kind of have to immerse yourself in it to truly understand it. You get it theoretically, sure, but it almost feels more real when you put yourself into it. It's also nice to hear the government and conspiracy theories that ESTPs have.
You haven't heard nothing yet. You haven't heard nothing.
Tip of the iceberg right there.
We can hang around and talk about this for a minute.
Yes. It gets you going. Whenever I'm with Flow State long enough, I will hear a conspiracy theory about the government for sure. Like, it is a guaranteed.
I've got a whole stack of books sitting beside me that Behold a Pale Horse by Bill Cooper. This is the shit right there.
Yeah, really awesome. And it's nice to hear from the ENTJs, their strategic long-term approach to life and how they have this vision and they try to figure out a way to linearly get there. You know, how do I schedule my time or see certain time estimations in order to achieve this goal of getting something done? You know, Nee even has a clock beside him to make sure that he's working towards the same. And that is so intentional. That brings the level of intentionalness up 10 notches. With NI, I tend to associate the more higher up it is, sometimes it'll carry more intentionality. And you see that down to the way like Nee has like clocks around him, trying to make sure that the things in his life are pointing towards this purposeful direction. I don't know how to explain it. It's so planned out and structured. Oh gosh, it makes everyone else go like, what am I doing with my life?
I like that idea
Doms.
a lot, actually. I like that clock in the periphery sort of thing, because you're aware of it without having to attend to it actively. So I might have to boost that idea.
Let me know how it works out. Yeah.
If you look around Nee's life, you know that he's living according to the 80-20 principle. So the things that he applies in his life are definitely life hacks anyone can do because they're just brilliant. So if you see anything Nee is applying, like the 5-minute journal or that clock around there, they'll literally improve your life if you adopt it too, no matter who you are. It's just that, you know, Nee, he takes that mental concept, that mental shortcut, and then he just immediately structures it and applies it to his life in a way that's magic. He's also known as the wise one in the comment section, so that's great. And with Kat, you're able to be this go-getter. You see what needs to get done and you make it happen. Yeah, and I appreciate that. You have this really great spirit going through life. You're able to knock down all of the dominoes that need knocking down. And I'm like, yeah, the momentum that ENTJs have, they're a force to be reckoned with. They are like kind of productivity machines. And so I am in awe. And your type 3-ness adds to it too. So you're like double that. And so your type A personality always astounds me and makes me in wow. It's just nice to get to know you, Kat, in the times that we've gotten to talk together as well. Those were really wholesome and awesome times. Yeah. And Daniel, it's nice talking to you, man. You're always there for me and Susan when we want to have intuitive chats with you. With Susan, like she brings them up when you're driving, so there's no escape. You just have to talk to her about NI stuff. And with me, I bring you on these panels, so you have to talk about typology. And so it's awesome how you have different sources of NI. It's great. You know, Susan kind of portrays you as this superhero sometimes when your kids are having problems and you're there and you're able to adapt and then attend to crisis situations. You're just able to maintain a cool head and then just fix the situation effortlessly. It's like your body just is able to figure out, okay, what do I have to kind of do to fix the situation? And so STPs are known as being good under crisis situations. And you really do prove that to be the case. And my ESFP mother is bringing me sushi right now.
That's awesome.
Yes. And
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it is delicious. I never know what I'm going to have throughout the day because you see SE DOMs, they're quite unpredictable.
What keeps life exciting though? Everybody needs an SE in their life.
Yeah, I never have a heads up on anything, like anything.
See, you've survived this long pretty well. You'd be all right.
Yes. Oh man. So flow state, you have like a really refined way of explaining things. Like when you talk, it's very intellectual. And I think it breaks the stereotype of people portraying ESTPs as meatheads, because that's totally not the case and it's totally not true. And if people really know ESTPs, for a majority of them, it's not the case. And so I think you're a very good example of a well-spoken ESTP. When you talk, you are able to explain your points very clearly. And, you know, when people describe you to me, they actually explain how they're very magnetized to the way that you talk. So that's a compliment to your articulation abilities.
Well, thank you. And you know, I love coming to your videos for your closing FE compliments.
Right. If you're ever feeling down, just come on a panel with Joyce and you're going to get this boost at the end. You're going to leave feeling great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Yeah, she's the best.
Oh, thanks, guys. I feel uplifted through that as well. And you sometimes might get sushi, too, because of my parents who are SE.
I'm going to go buy sushi now when we're done, just because of that, for real.
Sweet stuff. And so, Kate, you have this rad typology dating app that you have out as well.
Thanks for plugging it.
For sure. Anytime. Something very interesting about you is that both you and Flow State used to think you were ENTPs. It's interesting how a lot of ESTPs tend to think they're ENTPs, and then other people tend to mistype ESTPs as ENTJs. So while ESTPs tend to know that they're not ENTJs, they have other people telling them that they're TD-DOMs, and then they're like, nah, I'm not, bro. But yeah, Kate, I really like how you're able to infuse compatibility with type theory, and it's something very unique that you bring to the type field, and I think that your videos on that are very fascinating, and I enjoy that.
We're adding Big 5 next, coming in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, Big 5. Adding the personality models, yeah. When people are interested in the MBTI, they tend to be interested in all sorts of personality models too. Because you have the whole self-growth community kind of chiming in and going like, yeah. It's going to be exciting news to hear what's up with that. Yeah, if you want to find love, then I would suggest Kate is one of the places you can do that. So, I mean, not
me personally. Do not find love with me. Find love on the Type Match app. Yes.
Yes, that is what I meant. Sorry. So,
well, Joyce, thanks for putting this together. It's always nice to come on here and get different people's perspectives. This is like the one place I come and always know that I can hang out with other ESTPs. I know you're going to have found and collected all these people together and get these interesting perspectives. It's always fun to come out here and meet new people and get to know them and to talk about it. So thanks for putting this together.
I'm glad to have you all here. It's a sheer pleasure, and it's an amazing experience to have a think tank with all of you and to truly brainstorm what type really is with each other, because that's how we advance the community. It's through collective helping of understanding. It's how we get anything great done. And it's pretty interesting because throughout this whole video, Taylor is smoking or vaping. And that's like with some certain percentage of ETPs, like I noticed that they smoke or vape in the video, like even with talking with famous people, like he's an ETP and he'll also vape during videos. And I'm like, this is also a possible differentiator between ENTJ and ESTP, because that's way too informal for an ENTJ to want to do. Like even if an ENTJ were to vape, they wouldn't do it on video because they're like, that is a little bit, because it's the TE professionalism. It's like a certain type of formalism that they'll have. Whereas like with ESTPs, you'll have a more informal type of approach to things. Well, with some of them, not all of them. But
maybe
no,
all
I also noticed that like Kate and I are both taking our drinks. We're just taking like our swigs of things, and Kat has like this straw, so it's like she can keep her head and everything focused, and it's very less like, you know, interrupting and things. It's just funny. We're just like, oh, whatever. I'm thirsty. I'm going to take a drink. She's taking her sips. It was just, I thought that was funny.
Yeah. With the ESTPs, you'll see more chillness in their body language and what they do.
All their movements in TJs look very intentional.
Yeah. Everything seems intentional down to the movements with ENTJs.
I think for me, sometimes I intentionally, I mean, obviously I'm set up in my garage and I'm chain smoking, so that's just me being me. But a lot of times it is I intentionally initiate casual behavior because it puts other people at ease.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. This was fun. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.